Okay, let me tell you a story. When I was a teenager, I always wanted a Jeep. Okay, so I went to high school and always wanted a Jeep. I had this little Honda Civic, but I always wanted a Jeep. And so when I graduated high school, I got a job and I said, I'm going to buy a Jeep. And I went in and I was going to do anything to get this Jeep that I possibly could. And therefore got taken advantage of big time by the salespeople in the car dealership to the point where I was paying 23% interest. I had no credit, I had nothing. So I want to show you how to calculate monthly payments, with something I wish I had known back then. Show you how to calculate monthly payments very simply so that when you go in to purchase something like a car, you can see how much you can afford and what the interest rate is and not get taken advantage of like I did.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, so there's a couple of terms that I need to tell you about before we begin, just so that it makes sense when we go into Excel. Okay, so the first one is PV. You see PV, that is present value. Okay, so what present value is essentially, in the terms of a loan, it is the current value of the loan. So if you're buying a car that's $12,000 and you put $1,000 down, how much is the present value of the loan?
11,000.
11,000. Okay, so that's present value of the loan. FV is future value. What do you think FV, what's future value mean in a loan? What do you think that number would be?
I would guess if you've paid it all off, it would be 0.
Yeah, so it's what the loan is worth in the future. And so it's like, oh, in the future, I want it to be 0. So it makes sense. Okay, then there's PMT. What do you think that is? Just sound it out.
Payment?
Payment. Okay, that is what we're going to be calculating as your monthly payment. And then rate is the annual interest rate. And then NPER, that's a little tricky one that some people may not understand completely, but it's number of periods, and we're going to calculate those in terms of months. Okay? So let's go back to our $12,000 car that we put $1,000 down. So it's $11,000 there under present value. 0 under our future value. Payment we're going to leave blank because that's what we want to calculate. Rate, you know, with a used car, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5%, it changes. So we'll just say 4% for simplicity.
Okay.
And then number of periods. Okay, so most car loans are 4 years, maybe 5 years, something like that. So we'll go with 4 years. So 48 is the number of months in 4 years. Make sense?
Okay.
Okay. So now what you want to do is you want to go up here to this auto sum, and this is an older version of Excel, but really what you want to do is just end up finding this formula bar. Okay, and you want to scroll down until you find PMT. Okay, and we double click that. Now, you see these little boxes here that we need to populate. So it starts with rate. Okay, they're not going in any particular order, but we'll go in order here. So we'll say present value, and all you do is you come and you select present value.
Okay.
Okay, then you come down here to future value, and you select future value.
Okay.
And then rate, and we put the rate. Now, very important here for rate, this is an annual interest rate, so you need to divide that by 12. Okay, so it's because there's 12 months in a year, so you want to divide that interest rate there. So
Because
always
you're calculating monthly payment.
exactly. Okay, and then the number of periods is here.
Okay.
Now, we end up at this type. Okay, so and you can see here, there's 1 or 0. And so this could be the beginning of the month or the end of the month or different times. I always put 1 just to say that my payment is going to be due at the beginning of the month. And now what you're going to notice is like the amount that we're going to get back might vary by a couple of dollars, and it's based off of this 1 or 0. So
Okay.
it's like $2 or something like that might be
Okay.
different. So it may not be exactly the same as you would see at when you're purchasing what your monthly payment is going to be. And a lot of it, again, has to do with this.
Okay.
Okay, so we put type 1, and then we just hit enter. And we see there, our monthly payment is $247.54.
Okay.
Okay, so what if your car is more expensive? What do you think you would do here?
You, depending on how much you could afford each month, if you could afford more per month, you could potentially buy a more expensive car. If you couldn't, you might have to stretch out your number of periods and pay over a longer amount of time.
Yeah. So all you have to do, now that your formula is set, let's say you want to buy a $14,000 car and have the $1,000 down, so $13,000 is your loan. Well, there's the difference. It calculates automatically for you.
Okay.
Now, going into a car dealership, a lot of times the salespeople will say, what do you need your payment to be? You want to buy this $13,000 or $14,000 car? Well, I need my payments to be, $200 a month. And they'll say, well, great, we can do that for you. Well, what they do is they come over here in a number of periods, and instead of 4 years, well, let's take it up to 5 years. Oh, we're getting closer.
Okay.
Oh, let's try 6 years. Hey, look at that. I got your payment to $202, like that. Well, that's because you're paying on it for 6 years as opposed to 4 years.
Right. So you're paying over a longer period of time, and therefore you're paying more interest.
You're paying more interest, exactly. So you're paying the difference, or you're paying that additional interest, more money to essentially have a longer loan to be able to afford the car.
Okay.
So this is just, it's a good, you saw how quickly we did this. It was very fast that we could get in there and just with a couple of clicks, we know our monthly payment, we know what we can afford. So ideally you want to get the lowest term, so maybe 3 years, 36 months, and still have the lowest payment that we can afford. You don't want to be paying longer and paying more interest.
Right.
Does it make sense?
Makes sense.
Very helpful?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you so much. I feel like I could go into a dealership and be more prepared, knowing what I can afford and having more control over my payments and the number of months I'll be paying. So that was a very helpful tool.
Knowledge is power.
Yes, that's
Awesome.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.